When Archon Hissarion of the Tevinter Imperium drove his sword through Andraste's heart while she burned to death atop her pyre, he thought he was putting a final end to the dangerous, subversive religion which had formed around her. However, the martyrdom of the Lady Redeemer only increased the rate at which people in the Empire embraced her cult of the Maker. Eventually, Hissarion submitted to the inevitable. Welcome to our 4th video on the history of the world of Dragon Age, where we will explore the formation of the Chantry and the spread of Thedas' most dominant monotheistic religion throughout the 4 corners of the world. The Chantry might be there to guide us through dark times, but they don't know anything about what really matters, that being the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends. So instead, we'll give you some real guidance on how to defeat a few tricky bosses. The big one for Thedas residents these days is probably the Dragon, for which you'll need a team that can debuff its attack and defense, and exploit that it can be poisoned. Note it will poison you as well though. You'll need a different approach for the Minotaur. You need champions who will shield and heal you while it's in its fury state, dealing huge damage. Then afterwards, while it recovers, you deal extra damage to it, so go all out. That's the nice thing about Raid, there are so many strategies and possible combinations of champion skills that there's always something new to try, and you'll need the right approach for each of the countless bosses and encounters. Right now in Raid, they're running a Valentine's Day event for all new players until March 14th. Where you can play a load of Valentine's Day minigames to win not only champions and in-game items, but real-life Amazon gift cards worth up to $1,000. Get the game via our link below, then go to raidlovequest.plarium.com to sign up. Existing players can also go here to get a code they can use to claim a free Valentine's Day gift. And speaking of free stuff, if you start playing Raid via our link in the description, or by scanning the QR code on the screen, you'll get a load of in-game bonuses worth $35, including the epic champion Jotun. Don't miss out on Raid Shadow Legends a moment longer. 10 years after Andraste's death, Archon Hissarion declared the Maker to be the one true god. Worship of the Maker and his divine bride had found its first stronghold among the barbarians of the Southlands, but ironically it was the Lady Redeemer's majorcratic archenemy that would first turn Andraste's teachings into a properly organized religion. To demonstrate his newfound submission to Andraste's holy message, Archon Hissarion revealed the truth behind her death to the whole world, that Mafarath, the Lady of Restitution's own husband, had been the one who betrayed Andraste to the Imperium in exchange for the independence of his barbarian empire. This revelation shattered the status quo in southern Thedas. After the exalted march on Tevinter, almost all the lands not part of the Imperium were under the rule of Mafarath and his sons. When the peoples of those lands discovered that their overlord, or their overlord's father, had directly caused their holy prophetess's death, there was hell to pay. The Chant of Light is particularly reticent in telling us how Mafarath died, but it seems that he was killed, likely by his own sons, shortly after his betrayal was revealed. Soon the sons too would lose control over their lands. Evrian, the middle child and ruler of the Free Marches, had always been the most devoted to spreading his stepmother's teachings. He willingly abdicated his throne out of shame for his father's duplicity, dispersing his holdings among the many tribes in the region. The other 2 brothers would not enjoy such amiable transitions of power. In truth, tensions had been bubbling in their land for years, for the local tribes, be they Navaran, Planocene, Syrian or others, had all begun to resent being ruled over by the foreign Alamari chieftains. The revelation of Mafarath's betrayal simply ignited the powder keg. In Navarra City, the youngest son, Verald, was the victim of a coup in which most of his court was murdered. He fled to the court of his brother, Mafarath's eldest son, Isarath. There, both brothers were outplayed by Isarath's cunning wife, the Syrian Kiya or chieftainess Jeshavis. In a ruthless ploy to free the Syrian people from Alamari rule, Jeshavis manipulated Verald into kinslaying Isarath for his throne, only to lead a popular rebellion that deposed and killed the subsequently weakened Verald. The establishment of Jeshavis as the first native ruler of the southern barbarian heartlands is generally considered to be when the tribal Syrian culture began evolving into the genteel, romantic high culture of the modern Orlesians. Indeed, it would be the successors of Jeshavis who would lead Orlais into not only supplanting Tevinter as the cultural and political heart of Thedas, but also creating the religious and social institutions which define the daily lives of nearly every modern Thedosian. 36 years before the founding of the Chantry, an unlikely alliance was forged when Septimius Drakon, the son of an imperial Tevinter nobleman, was married to Castana, the daughter of a prominent Syrian chieftain. In the generations after Jeshavis, Orlais had been ruled by a succession of female monarchs known as Gothi. Castana had ambitions to become the next Gothi of Orlais. As it so happened, her husband was a brilliant political schemer, having learned from the best by growing up among Tevinter's cutthroat nobility. With Septimius' support, Castana was able to claim the Orlesian throne. Soon after, she gave birth to their son, Cordelius Drakon, the man who created modern Thedas. When Cordelius was but a boy, he claimed to have a holy vision in which Andraste herself had appeared before him and charged him with redeeming the world in the eyes of the Maker. By the young prince's time, most of the humans of Thedas had converted to the monotheistic worship of the Maker. However, outside of Tevinter, there was no standardization of this worship, with various tribes and clans each having their own variety of the cult of Andraste, with their own rituals, traditions, and versions of the Lady Redeemer's words. At the tender age of 16, Prince Drakon inherited Castana's throne, but found he lacked the loyalty of many of the clans who had supported his mother. In a bid to secure much-needed allies, he married Lady Aria Montlore, who was the daughter of a powerful lord in Valchevon, a master markswoman and a shrewd tactician. At the time of their marriage, Orlais was barely half the size it is today, but that was soon to change. Cordelius and Aria soon embarked upon a holy campaign, uniting Orlais by right of the spear and the sword, transforming the nation from a confederation of loosely united clans and city-states into an efficient centralized empire, all while expanding its borders well into modern-day Ferelden and Navarra. Through these conquests, Drakon also forced all of his subject peoples to adopt a universal orthodox version of Andraste's Chant of Light, thereby standardizing the Andrastian faith. To further glorify his god, the righteously guided prince demolished the ancient Syrian fortress which had once been the seat of Queen Jeshavis. In its place, he erected a grand temple to the Maker, a chantry where the one true song of Andraste shall forever after be heard. After a successful spree of conquests, Cordelius Drakon marched into the city of Val Royeaux and in the waning years of the Ancient Era was crowned Emperor of Orlais. As his final act in the imperial office, Drakon laboured to cement the standardization of the Andrastian faith. He declared that an official church, the Chantry, would be the only official body with the divine authority to interpret the Chant of Light. To lead the Chantry, Emperor Drakon appointed Olesa of Monsemar, the only female general in Drakon's armies during his Wars of Unification, and a woman known both for her skill in the arts of war and her devotion to her faith. In Olesa, Drakon saw an echo of Andraste, a spiritual leader and a maiden of war. So it was that Olesa became the first divine pontiff of the Chantry, taking on the holy name of Justinia. This day marks the end of the Ancient Era, the beginning of the Chantry calendar, and year 1 of the Divine Age. One of the first acts of the Chantry was to enforce a complete ban of the practice of magic. After all, when Tevinter had ruled the world, magic had been their tool of oppression. Moreover, the practical risks of magic use, such as mages summoning demons from the Fade, were a threat to anyone who lived in proximity to practitioners of sorcery. However, in the early years of the Divine Age, the Chantry found it difficult to actually suppress the use of magic, which continued to be commonly practiced throughout the land by rogue hedge mages, cultists, and heretics. In response to the rampant and unchecked sorcery ravaging the land, an independent group of vigilantes, called the Inquisition, was created, an organization dedicated to protecting peoples from the tyrannies and dangers of the arcane wheresoever it appeared. Before tensions between mages, the Chantry, and the Inquisition could bubble over, all parties found themselves facing bigger problems. In the 5th year of the Divine Age, the Darkspawn, burrowing deep beneath the derelict Dwarven Deep Roads, found and awakened the old god Zezical, turning it into an archdemon and beginning the second blight. Like the first blight, the second was a calamity that spanned multiple generations. However, unlike during the time of accursed Damat, this time humanity had a dynamic emperor and a holy purpose to unite behind. Indeed, in the first decades of Zezical's onslaught, Cordelius Drakon and the Andrastian armies of mighty Orlais led the charge against the Horde. The emperor was nothing if not a pragmatist, and knew that to defeat an apocalyptic force of nature like the Darkspawn, he needed powerful allies, and could not be scrupulous about who they were. To that end, he enlisted the help of Orlais' outlaw mages, had the Chantry lift the ban on their practice, and permitted them to use their full arcane powers against the Darkspawn. This culminated in the Navaran Accord, which saw the creation of the Circle of Magi, an organization governed and monitored by the Chantry. As members of the Circle, mages would be allowed to practice their craft freely. However, they would also be isolated from mainstream society, locked into towers unless granted leave for a specific purpose, such as to fight Darkspawn. To enforce these rules, the Inquisition of old was transformed into the Templars, a holy order under Chantry authority, which was charged with hunting down any apostate mages who either refused to join the Circle or escaped from the Circle, while also acting as a police force for the mages within Circle towers, to ensure they were not partaking in any forbidden arcane arts. Knowing the Grey Wardens were the only force on Thedas capable of slaying their archdemon, the Darkspawn had brought their full might to bear on their fortress of Weishaupt. Here, Emperor Drakon achieved one of his finest victories, when his relief army broke the blighted siege, delivering the Wardens from certain doom. So impressed were the Wardens by Drakon's charisma and command, that the order was converted to the teachings of the Chantry. Indeed, wherever Drakon's armies fought, from the Anderfels to Navarra to the Bannon, they spread the chant of light. Through the crisis of the Blight, the authority of the Chantry spread throughout Thedas, as her Andrastian armies proved themselves to be the foremost bulwark standing between the world and oblivion. In the 45th year of the Exalted Age, Cordelius Drakon died of old age, but his successors took up the mantle and never let up against the Darkspawn. In year 95 of the Exalted Age, the Grey Warden hero Corin slew Infernal Zezical in battle. Now, future generations only had 5 more blights to look forward to. By the end of the second blight, numerous new kingdoms had arisen across Thedas, with the political geography of the continent beginning to look more or less like it does now in the modern Dragon Age. In the south, the Empire of Orlais was the preeminent power. In the Free Marches, the descendants of former Planocene barbarians and Tevinter colonists had coalesced into a disunited league of city-states, with Kirkwall, Starkhaven and Tantavale being the most politically relevant. Originally, the city of Navarra was one such Marcher city-state, but due to the charismatic leadership of the Pentagast dynasty, it rapidly expanded and was soon large enough to be a formidable kingdom in its own right. No such political centralization would occur in the sacred southeastern plains and woodlands of Andraste's homeland. Although the region today is home to the Kingdom of Ferelden, that unification would not occur until the Fifth Age. The Alamari would remain a stubbornly disunited and tribalistic people for centuries to come. In the north, the political reach of ailing Tevinter continued to decline, as new polities were birthed out of the Empire's former territory. The free-spirited peoples of Rivain had rebelled against the Imperium and forged a kingdom for themselves in the waning years of the Ancient Era, which was around the same time that Antiva, a hive of smuggling and piracy, had crystallized into a mercantile princedom of good repute. Antiva, for its part, would never forget its clandestine roots, and to this day remains a nation famous for the House of Crows, the most infamous and deadly order of assassins on Thedas. Meanwhile, in the northwest, Tevinter had never reclaimed the Anderfels after abandoning it in the Second Blight, and eventually it became an independent kingdom. There is an immense amount of cultural diversity throughout all the nations which have thus far been mentioned, and yet throughout Thedas, peoples as different from one another as an Antivan winemaker, a Navaran crypt sweeper, or a Ferelden dog lord all had one thing in common: they were adherents of the same church. Indeed, from Rialto Bay to the western approach, and from Denerim to Weishaupt, the Orlesian Chantry was the chief religious body that educated the people and governed their daily lives. There was, however, one exception to this rule. There could be no doubt that the Tevinter Imperium was an Andrastian nation. In fact, they had been organizing the Andrastian faith long centuries before Emperor Drakon had appointed Divine Justinia as the first holy pontiff of the Chant of Light. As such, while the authority of the Orlesian Chantry spread throughout the rest of Thedas, the ancient empire guardedly kept to their own customs of worship. Soon, tensions between the Chantry and the Tevinter clergy began to simmer over seemingly irresolvable doctrinal disputes. The Grand Clerics of Tevinter Andrastianism were male, which chagrined the Orlesian Chantry, whose hierarchy was comprised exclusively of women. This was because Andraste herself had been a woman, and it was believed that men were too prone to anger, jealousy, and passion to properly serve as holy leaders, just like Maharramli had been when he betrayed his divine wife. However, by far the greatest source of conflict ultimately arose from the second verse of Canticle of Transfigurations in the Chant of Light. Magic exists to serve man, and never to rule over him. The Orlesian Chantry fulfilled this verse by making mages fully subservient and isolating them in circled towers away from society. However, Tevinter had been ruled by mages for millennia, and magic had long been a valued trait, prized and nurtured through selective breeding in the upper classes. These old habits died hard, even after the empire converted to Andrastianism. Thus, the imperial clerics argued that when Andraste said that magic exists to serve man and never to rule over him, it meant that mages must serve the greater good, which was best accomplished by allowing mages to take part in government, thereby allowing those with arcane powers to retain their role as Tevinter's privileged elite. Eventually, it became evident that this liturgical quibble was irreconcilable, and the Divine of the Orlesian Chantry declared the worshippers of Tevinter to be heretics. In response, the Archon of the Imperium officially declared a schism from the Orlesian Chantry, appointing its own divine, a man, at the head of its own official chantry. To this day, the religious rivalry between the Orlesian and Imperial chantries remains an omnipresent source of tension in Thedosian politics. Whatever the case, by the end of the Divine Age, the overwhelming majority of humanity, Thedas' dominant race, was now subscribed to one of the two major forms of Andrastianism. However, the Chantry did not intend to stop its proselytizing where humanity ended. After all, it had been one of Andraste's core teachings that only when the Chant of Light had spread to all four corners of the earth and been embraced by all races and peoples would the Maker return to make the world a paradise. In our next episode on the history of the Dragon Age world, we will cover the exalted march on the Dales and the fall of the last elven homeland. So make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing, as it helps immensely, and don't forget to comment. We'll try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to know what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.